Thank you, everybody, and very excited to be here. Thank you to the team, Channel IT, for organizing this webinar. We're going to talk about something which is pretty new today, something which is pretty exciting. It's a paradigm shift in the way the industry is thinking about threat detection and response. I'm a techie. I've basically been building deceptive techniques and active defense for the better part of 15 years now. And I'm hoping that I can give you a sense of the benefits that this way of thinking can bring to your organizations. So I'll preface this by saying that while I'm going to show you my technology and my product, the most important part of the webinar is I'm hoping to change your thinking about how you can more efficiently do threat detection. You can save yourself money. You can make your analysts more productive. And this is really the future of the industry. For those of you who are tracking what folks like Mitre are doing or what's going on at RSA conference these days, you see that this is the bleeding edge of where security is basically going, right? Two quick points which I think are important. Everything I talk about today applies to two different types of organizations. Organization one is the organization that has everything, big security team, huge budgets, 10 different solutions. For them, deception is a great way to optimize their threat detection program. For organization two, deception is a great way. So organization two, maybe you have limited budgets, low team, very little threat detection capability. You're just starting your journey. For them, deception is the first line of defense. So it's the first line of defense for small organizations, and it's the last line of defense for large organizations. And as we go through the presentation, I will try to talk to you about some of our customers that fall into both those brackets. So hopefully we can have something for everyone on this call. So what we're talking about today is a concept that is not new, both in traditional defense as well as in cybersecurity. So essentially, deception has been a tactic that every military general has used from from the dawn of time. So 5 years ago, almost 6 years ago, when I started the company, I said, why don't we have deception in cybersecurity? It's such a powerful tactic. It's such a great way to defeat your adversary. Why haven't we got it into cybersecurity? And obviously, the industry has, over the years, from the late 80s, we've had honeypots and we've used honeypots from time to time. But honeypots have always been used for threat research, right? For academic research. They've never really been used at scale as part of a threat detection program. For the last 5 years at Smokescreen, across hundreds of customers, we've been solving this problem by making honeypots something internal, which can detect even the most serious bad guys. So we have a track record of catching everything from targeted ransomware attacks, Maze Group, multiple ransomware groups, APT threat actors out of China, North Korea, Eastern Europe. So deception really works. And I'm obviously happy to continue this conversation after this. So at the end of the presentation, I will share my contact information because I love to talk about this subject. So let's jump right into it. My title slide says we're deconstructing Mitre Shield and active defense. I'm sure a number of you on the call today are familiar with the Mitre Corporation. They're one of the leading think tanks out of the US on cybersecurity frameworks. And many of you may have even adopted Mitre Attack, ATT and CK, which is a very common framework. I think every cybersecurity product on the planet is now mapped against Mitre Attack. And every security operations center really bases their reality and their program around Mitre Attack. What many people don't know is in August of 2020, Mitre released their successor to Mitre Attack, which is called Mitre Shield. Now, because of COVID, this was a lot quieter than it would normally have been. But if you just see the two words, attack and shield, attack was built for pen testers, red teamers. Shield is built for defenders. That's why the name, says, it implies that it's for defense, right? So I'm going to talk to you a bit today about how you can start building your defensive structure on the latest and greatest framework in the threat detection space, right? I'll also define the word active defense. Active defense is something which is a more proactive way of defeating your attacker. So for those of you who are doing things like threat hunting, you're already doing active defense, and I'm just going to try to extend your thinking into that space. So that's where we're going to go. And we've already spoken a bit about me. I think Andrea said nice things about me, so I'm not going to go into more detail, other than the fact that this is something I've been doing for about 20 years now. I run the Black Hat Vegas training. We did it last in 2018 on this exact same topic, and I brought pieces of that training and thought process into today's deck. So let's start with the basic definition. Active defense sounds like an industry buzzword, and in cybersecurity, everybody has a new buzzword every year, right? The interesting thing is active defense is not an industry buzzword. It's actually military terminology. The idea of active defense is if someone was to cross into your borders, right, in a traditional, military scenario, you have two options. You can either go very defensive, which means you'll hold a position, right? Maybe you'll sit in the bunker and wait for them, or you will engage in what is called active defense, which is that you will go out to proactively meet them, engage them, and kick them out of your territory, right? And every modern military on the planet is engaged in active defense, because once someone enters our territory, our network in an IT scenario, you're not just going to sit back very passively. But in cybersecurity for the last 10 years, that's what we've done. We've said the bad guy is in, assume breach, hope we can catch him. Instead, we must go out, we must engage him, and we must actively try to kick him out, which is why in the last few years, approaches like threat hunting and deception have really started coming up, and every modern security organization has adopted these. So what are the basic principles of active defense? The first is, as the word implies, it's proactive. So what we're doing is, instead of just saying, hey, we set up a SIM and a SOC and we have some rules and we wait and see what happens, what we do is we proactively try to anticipate what will the bad guy do? What is he after? Is he after my Swift server? Is he after my customer database? Is he after my senior management? Is he after financial information? Is he after ransomware? So we anticipate where they're going to go. We anticipate the entire kill chain approach that they will take to reach that point. So we will say, we assume he will spearfish my users. Or if you're an e-commerce company, we might assume he'll break in through a web application vulnerability. We'll talk through how they will go through persistence, privilege escalation, lateral movement, data theft, encryption. We anticipate that approach, and we then take a risk-based approach to deploying countermeasures. So step one, we don't just sit back and wait. We think this is the route they'll take to the goal, and we're going to place things in front before that. The second is active defense is asymmetric. It is guerrilla warfare for cybersecurity. So unfortunately, while most of us are employed by large corporations who have a lot of money, in cybersecurity, the tables are turned. Usually the attacker has time and resources on their side. Resources could be technical resources, it could be money, but they certainly have time. We as defenders have to detect them every single day, 24/7, 365 days a year. We have to be right. They just have to be right only once for us to have a problem. So what we said is, can we make cybersecurity an asymmetric approach, which means, can we take very little effort, spend very little money, and still be able to engage those really serious bad guys? And that's the basic principle of guerrilla warfare. In guerrilla warfare, the guerrillas don't have the most resources. They have way less resources, but they wage an asymmetric battle against a much more resourced adversary, and they beat them. So if I had to put this in terms for those of you who've studied economics, this is really the Pareto principle: 20% effort for 80% of the result, right? So first, proactive; second, asymmetric approach; third, crucial principle of active defense is we engage the adversary. This means when we find an adversary in the network, we actively try to remove them, we try to modify their reality, we try to make their life very difficult. I had someone from my incident response team the other day make a very interesting statement. He said, Sahir, every single organization I know, when they detect a breach, they go into active defense mode. Because if you have a bad guy in your network, you will immediately start engaging. You're not just going to sit back. Your board of directors will tell you, kick him out, get him out, remove his access, right? So imagine if you were already doing that as a default, so that you're not learning how to do it at the time when he's really, one step away from stealing all your information. if you already knew how to engage adversaries, you would be much better placed in the event that somebody were to actually break into your network. So that's the third principle. The fourth one is about disruption. So usually when we look at cybersecurity, we set a very low bar. We say that, the bad guy is going to attack us and we will just kind of hold him off. Instead, you must understand that even the most seasoned APT groups have a boss and a budget and a playbook, which means they have a standard playbook of how they breach organizations, and they like to follow that playbook because that's how they win. Of course, there are attacks like the SolarWinds attack, which are very, very, very customized. But 90% of the serious attacks that most of the people on the call today will face follow a playbook. So if we already know the playbook, which we already do, can we disrupt that playbook? Can we make sure that the options that the bad guy has are limited? Can we influence their decision making? Can we frustrate their tools? If they do a port scan, can we give them bad results? If they try to crack a password, can we make it harder, right? So we don't just want to respond to them, we want to disrupt the standard operating procedure of the attacker. The same way that we have standard operating procedures and playbooks in our security operations centers, and they try to disrupt those, let's do it back to them, right? And the last and most crucial, the fifth piece of the puzzle is, in cybersecurity so far, we have always considered malicious software. All defenses that we build today are designed around malicious software. If you deploy an antivirus, it's looking for a virus, malicious software. If you deploy, a web application firewall, it's focused on catching a SQL injection attack. Again, exploitation of software. An EDR solution is looking for PowerShell being deployed on your endpoints, software. The thing is, in cybersecurity, software is just the tool for the attacker to do the job. The modern attacker is human centric. There is a man, woman, or child behind the keyboard, and they are taking decisions. They're using software to advance, right? But if we can focus on the human threat rather than the changing tools, every day the tools change. For example, today it's PowerShell. Now we're already seeing C#. The other day we caught an attack where the adversary is using a new programming language called NIM, NIM. Many people have never even heard of NIM, but they're using NIM because security teams are tracking PowerShell, they're tracking C# code execution. So we want to focus on the human being, their biases, their goals, their motivations, and we want to attack that. That is the weak link for the bad guy. So 5 principles: proactive, asymmetric, engaging, disruptive, and human threat centric. These are the basic principles of active defense. And over the next few years, you will see every modern security operations practice is going to imbibe these. Many of you on this call may already have adopted some pieces of it. So what does active defense look like in practice? I'm a great believer in trying to find a real world analogy. So you may be aware that missile defense systems are designed to basically monitor your airspace. So say you're a country and you want to monitor your airspace, you monitor your airspace. And if somebody were to fire a missile into your airspace, you would basically fire something back, again, still within your airspace, to shoot down that missile. That's active defense. The difference between active and passive defense is, passive defense is you have a hardened bunker, which means that that missile comes in, hits the bunker, and hopefully we all survive. In active defense, we proactively will go within the boundaries of our environment, our network, our airspace. We will engage and we will destroy the incoming threat, right? So that is the difference between active and passive defense. And I urge all of you after this webinar, go look at all the defenses you set up in the last year and try to categorize them as to whether they are active defense, whether they are passive defenses. If you're doing something like threat hunting, it's an active defense. If you're doing something like attack surface reduction, it's an active defense. If you're doing, baselining, if you're doing, like EDR or some sort of hardening, that's probably a more passive defense. Nobody is saying that one is better than the other. There are no silver bullets in cybersecurity. You need the bunker and you need the intercept missile, right? But the time for active defense is really here and now. Okay, so usually when I present at about this point, somebody's saying, hey, are we hacking the bad guy back? Is that what we're doing? No. There's a very clear definition where, as I'm showing you on this slide, the difference between hack back is whether we are protecting our network, are we in our airspace, or are we trying to get into their network? So if you saw an attacker in your network and you sent an exploit to him and tried to break into his environment, that's hack back. But if he's on your network and you change his view of the hosts that are there, you change his view of what data is there, that is within your network. It is completely legal for you to decide what an attacker is able to see and do in your network, right? So active defense, deception, it is not a hack back thing. It is a purely within the confines of your legal entity and your network and IT infrastructure, you are going to make life very difficult. The best analogy I can give for this is for those of you, I feel pretty old when I give this example. There was the movie Home Alone, where the kid was basically trying to stop the robbers from breaking into his house. He was engaged in active defense. He was not going out and trying to beat them up somewhere outside his house. But when they entered his house, he made it very painful for them. So if you really want to explain active defense to your management, it's Home Alone in cybersecurity, right? And the sequels to that movie were really bad, but go with the first version. Okay, so I'll give a few quick examples of different things in active defense versus passive defense. I'll start with encryption algorithms. So everyone here is probably familiar with MD5 as a hashing algorithm. A lot of people used to use it to hash passwords. Now, that's a passive defense. A possible other alternative is an algorithm like bcrypt. So bcrypt assumes it's built into the algorithm that the attackers will over time have access to more compute power to crack passwords. So what bcrypt allows you to do is by just flipping one switch in your algorithm, you can make it that even if the attackers have this completely new computational power, they still can't crack your passwords. So if you look at bcrypt, you're doing a form of active defense, right? Another example on your threat detection, intrusion detection systems, EDRs, network threat analytics solutions, UEBA solutions. These are passive defenses. They wait for an alert to come. When the alert comes, they send it to the security team, but they don't engage the attacker. They don't try to manipulate the attacker. Deception, which I'll talk about a lot today, anticipates the attacker's motivations and actually changes their reality. So we're saying, okay, we're not passive, we're active. Incident response. If any of you have ever done IR, you'll know there's two ways to do IR. Option one is you just take changes to keep the bad guy in the same place or limit his options, right? Option two is you engage the attacker. You make his life more difficult. You take away his credentials. You try to eject him from the network. So you actively hunt him down and push back, right? That's the difference. So you'll see many modern IR teams are not just about responding to the incident, but engaging with the attacker. A great example here, supposing there was a phishing campaign against your organization. Traditional incident response would just block those phishing emails. Attacker engagement, you would go and try to take down the phishing site. Okay, or it could be a malware command and control site. So by taking it down, you're engaging the attacker. You're kind of going after him, right? I talked about SIM versus threat hunting. Your traditional SIM is a rule engine with some analytics on top of data. Threat hunting is a human being who's looking at that data and saying, I hypothesize that if a bad guy compromised my web application, he'll be in my DMZ segment. This is what I expect to find. I will go and hunt and see whether he's there. So very different. It's much more proactive. And the last one, for those of you who are interested in threat intelligence, the passive version is consuming threat intelligence. So you buy a threat intelligence feed, you consume it. But the active defense example is you start building your own threat intelligence. It's much more possible than it was before. You can be a small organization, but right now, if you can't name 5, attack groups that are after you, you need to start doing that. Because even if you're a small organization, if you have something worthy of protecting, you should know who's after it. What is their profile? Is it Fin7? Is it Fin4? Okay, this group targets pharmaceuticals. This group targets law firms. This group targets financial services. You can start creating your own threat intelligence. So these are just a few quick examples of active versus passive. And once again, you need both. You can't do with one or the other. Though I personally am biased. If I had to defend a network, I would prioritize active defense, especially if I have limited budgets, resources, and people. Active defense has much more bang for your buck, much more impact for the effort that you invest. Okay, So I spoke briefly about Mitre launching this new framework, and this is a fundamental shift in security. I'm going to just try to quickly take you guys through this. The URL is shield.mitre.org. And it's basically how Mitre has defended their own network for the last decade. It's very similar for those of you who are familiar with Mitre attack. It's a matrix and it has different goals that you want. So you want to contain him, you want to detect him, you want to disrupt him, etc. And then it gives you different techniques. You'll notice, I'm not going to go into a full deep dive here, you'll notice that about 70 to 80% of this says decoys. So a huge piece, if you want to adopt Mitre Shield, you will have to use deception and honeypots because 80% of this is deception and honeypots. If you're already, and I'll just give you an example, let's say decoy account. They go into detail about what you can do, the use cases, how to do it. And the most interesting thing, if you've already done Mitre attack, this has already
Sahir,
been crossed. Yeah.
Sahir, can you hear me? We are not able to see the screen.
Oh, have you lost my screen?
Yes.
1 sec. I apologize. Give me a second.
No worries, no worries.
I'll just come back and try to reshare. Okay, I'm resharing. Just let me know if you have it, Andreas.
Yes, now it's fine. Now it's fine.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I think I may have had some bandwidth issues on my side. So I was, to catch up on time, I was showing Mitre Shield, very similar to Mitre Attack. 80% of this is about deception. And if you're already using Mitre Attack, you can just cross map it. So if there's any Mitre Attack technique that you have, they have very kindly given you the active defense technique on Shield. So if you have this already, or your products that you're using are already using this Mitre Attack, which I believe most people would be, Mitre Shield is going to be a great way for you to move forward. And I highly urge all of you, even if you don't do deception, if you are serious about building a threat detection program for your organization in the next 18 months, you must look at Shield. It's currently hot topic, and it is probably one of the most modern ways to defend your network. So before you invest in anything new, before you develop any capabilities, please explore this framework. It's being developed on a day-to-day basis by the Mitre Group, and everyone from Fortune 500 to small organizations have already gone on top of this. So I'll come back to my presentation, and I hope, Andreas, that you can still see my slides. I'll just quick double check. You should be seeing a slide saying deception, Mitre Shield, and active defense.
I see for the different windows there, for different applications.
Perfect. Yeah, that's right. Okay, great. Okay, so let me make this very practical as an experiment for you guys today. Here's exactly, in a completely non-technical way, what does active defense look like? So imagine you have a pot of gold, something that you want to protect in your organization. This could be your data, this could be financial stuff, it could be anything. Bad guy at the bottom of the screen wants to get to this pot of gold. So what have we done? We put in place some barriers. These are like our firewalls, so protective controls. We put in place some monitoring systems like a CCTV to detect the bad guy. And we put in place, a team to monitor those systems, right? So this is an example of the chessboard as it is today. Now, if any of you are good with puzzles, you'll probably figure out there's a very simple route that the bad guy can take to bypass the protective and detective controls that we have in place. And this looks simple on this slide, but stop for a minute and think about this. Why is the bad guy able to defeat us? There's one simple reason. We have played the chessboard once. We have set our pieces one time, and he is able to say, okay, I know what you have. I can see your defenses. If you have this, I will do that. If you have this, I will do that. So he gets to play 5 chess moves and we play 1. Now, I'm not very good at chess, but I'm sure even those of you who may be very good at chess, if you got to play 1 move and your opponent got to play 5, chances are you're going to lose that game. The major reason is the modern security protections are predictable to bad guys. They know what you have, they can see them, and then they say, okay, you have EDR, I will bypass it. You have WAF, I will bypass it, etc. So how could we change this game? Very simple. We're going to put deception into this next slide. Excuse me. So what I've done here is many pots of gold, but only one pot of gold is real. The rest are fakes, they're decoys, they're honeypots, they're traps. Okay. Now, if I were to ask you, put yourself in the shoes of the bad guy, what is your first move? And I'm sure you're thinking of some smart option. I'll go for the first pot, or I'll try to grab all of them. But the point is, notice how I have shifted the problem to you. Earlier, the problem was on the defender. Now you as the attacker have a problem. I can even remove all the other defenses. You're still in a bad position, because as an attacker, I have now made the entire network hostile and unpredictable for you, which means that you don't have good data, you can't make good decisions, and if you touch the wrong pot of gold, you are going to get caught, you're going to get kicked out of the network, and you're going to lose. This is such a, it's two simple slides, but it is such a fundamental way of changing the thinking. In security, we work too hard as defenders. We don't push the risk, we don't push the problems onto the bad guy. We keep accepting the problems on ourselves. More data for us to analyze, more devices for us to harden, right? Instead, why don't we change our thinking? Why don't we make life difficult for them, right? So that's just my, sort of my few slides so far. I'm going to now just jump into how do we do it at Smokescreen? What is our product, right? And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to take you through a brief visualization of our dashboard, and I'm going to we have hundreds of features. I won't explain all 100. I'm going to explain the major pieces of this. So this is the Smokescreen Illusion Black dashboard. This is a completely cloud hostable. We're a cloud native company. If you wanted to access this and be on our platform, we could get you on our platform by the time this webinar is over. It's that simple, right? So nothing for you to host, nothing for you to manage, much very simple to deploy, right? If you need this, sorry,
Sahir,
yeah.
still,
Have, oh,
is
you
it
lost the screen
is
again?
it is it too black?
Oh, okay. It might be too black. I'll try to make it a bit brighter. Give me a second.
Okay, that would be good.
All right, just let me know if it gets. You should see
Better,
more
yes.
things. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
bit
for
better.
sure.
Unfortunately, this was built for SOC teams, Andreas, and SOC teams love to basically have dark screens. So that's how it is,
Really,
All right.
illusion black, really.
Yeah, very black. I mean, we don't have an Illusion White version, unfortunately, but yeah, it's a good piece of feedback.
Okay.
Yeah, but I hope the colors are just the screen sharing. It's very it's quite bright on my screen. I think it might be on the screen share. But in case anybody has difficulties, please write in the chat, and I'll try to go into more detail there. Right? Sorry,
I
I'm
suppose
actually
we are
on.
okay now, so you can go on.
Okay. I actually was logged into the wrong system, so good you pointed that out to me because it gives me a second to switch. I was on the wrong one.
Yeah, sure, no worries.
Okay, yeah, this should be a lot brighter. So
Okay.
everything in red, yeah, everything in red is a bad guy. Everything in blue is one of our honeypots. And we place honeypots on the network, on the endpoint, in Active Directory, and in the cloud. So 4 places. Now think about your normal threat detection. If you need to do EDR, you're only covering your endpoint. If you want to do something like dark trace, network threat analytics, it's a great solution, but you're only covering your network. With deception, you can cover multiple points in one solution, right? Endpoint, network, cloud, and identity system, all in one. And in each of these, we'll place different deception. So on the endpoint, we'll put fake files, fake passwords. On the network, we'll create, fake database servers, fake network traffic. In your Active Directory, we'll create fake users, fake computers for the bad guy to find. And in your cloud, we'll create, fake credentials, fake cloud instances, fake S3 buckets, all that good stuff. So I'll go into a bit more depth on what we can do there, but I want to talk about 3 major pieces. The first is, how do you set up the deception? 2, what is the data you receive? And 3, how can you respond? So how do you detect? How do you analyze? How do you respond? So I'll start with, how do you deploy deception? So on our platform, one of the things we've done as a SaaS business, we've tried to make this very simple. Our internal goal is, we want you to love using this product. It's a very sad state of affairs that we all in cybersecurity today, we go into office and we work with tools. And I don't think anybody has ever in their life said, I love working on my next generation firewall. I think they basically tolerate it, but in security, we don't love our tools. Why should it be that way? We should love our tools. So we try in Smokescreen to make the product so user friendly, so intuitive that you actually love to use the platform. So you can deploy deception completely automatic. I'll give you an example. In this case, I was set up for a manufacturing organization. All the decoys, these are network honeypots that I'm showing you here. All of these were automatically created. I didn't have to do any work. I just had to click once and it's created, PLC controllers, it's created SAP systems. And of course, if I want to go and tweak it, it's a very powerful platform. You can go under the hood and you can really, if you're an advanced user, you can really go and create very, very elaborate deception. But if you just say, hey, Sahir, I don't have time, I just want to detect bad guys, you can just go click add decoys over here. The system will recommend them to you. You press deploy, boom, done, right? So we can deploy deception very simply. This will again be on the endpoint. We have complete policies and management systems, so you can actually deploy this. If you don't know how to deploy this, we're partnered with folks like Channel IT. They can help you. We have a great 24/7, 365 support team. So we make it very easy for customers to come on board the platform and to actually deploy this. Usual statistics is customers of ours can deploy their first useful deception within 1.5 weeks. Now, if you think about that against other solutions where you'll probably take 6 months, maybe 1 year to deploy, tune, etc., that's a really big win. If you're worried about ransomware today, by the end of this webinar, if you write to us, I'm certain that within 1.5 weeks, I can get you detecting maybe not everything, but a good portion of it. And then within 90 days, we can get you completely set up. So 3 months versus 18 months, right? So that's how easy it is to deploy the deception. There's hundreds of different types. I'm not going to go into everything right now. Let's talk about how you analyze. Now, here's where one of the biggest problems in cybersecurity comes. Most people deploy, solutions, and then the analysts don't have enough information to really do their job. We did a survey last year, and we found that 85% of the alerts that a modern SOC gets are false positives. And we analyzed further and we found that that means an 8-hour day, your security analyst typically spends 1.5 to 2 hours of his day wasted time on false alerts. Can you imagine every time you go and you catch your boss and you say, give me more money, give me more people? Imagine if I could give you 2 hours back in your day for your existing security team. That alone is, a great win. So what we've done with the platform is the platform has very low false positives. In a typical deception environment, the number of false positives is probably 90 to 95% less than on other solutions. So you're already winning there. But we've gone further. Everything is available, even to a junior analyst in 2 clicks. So over here, I can see there's this bad guy, somebody in red, he's hit all my decoys. I mean, this is a big deal. It's lit up my dashboard. 1 click, dynamic risk scoring. So no high, medium, low. We allow you to prioritize risk in network based on the business risk. So if this guy is going and maybe trying to hack into, your reception front desk, maybe you don't care about him as much as if he's trying to hack into your CEO. Our deception system can understand that. The next thing, we have a system called threat parse. What this does is this guy has generated maybe 500 different logs, right? I don't want you to read 500 logs. I want you to see what the information in that log is. The log is data, right? So our threat parse system will reconstruct in simple English what the bad guy did. I'm going to take an example. It says possible Kerber roasting attack. So I've clicked once, second click. Now, this Kerber roasting attack, maybe I'm not an Active Directory specialist. I know nothing about it. We've explained everything the analyst needs. We've given examples of how the bad guy can do it. We've given mitigation. We've given that wonderful Mitre attack linkage, right? We've summarized the threat and we've pulled out the most important information. What was he trying to do, right? So even if you're an L1 analyst, you're a junior analyst, you can take a decision on this threat. You can understand this is serious, this is used by APT groups, and you can take a decision on this, right? The same for all the other stuff, and you can see the scoring. We also have for advanced teams, we have threat hunting feature. So you can go in by chronology. There is a complete network threat analytics under the hood. So if you want to do packet analysis, 2 clicks, you can get down to the packet layer. I'm literally deconstructing the packet right now. If I want the PCAP for Wireshark, I can do that. And we never limit you on the data. Every single log we track, I think over 1,000 different parameters for an attacker. If you want the raw logs, these are all the raw logs, right, which I was talking about. So, you want these raw logs with every single thing we know about this bad guy. This was an Nmap OS scan. We'll give it all to you, right? But the cool thing is, imagine how efficient your life will be if with 2 clicks, you can understand what's going on and you can take decisions. Now, so we've dealt with what can you deploy, very easy. How can you analyze, 2 clicks? Now you have a decision to make. You have to do something. Now, here's where the platform gets really interesting. You have 2 options. One, right here, you can take response actions. So we have an open API. Smokescreen's heavily built and very big proponents of open source. We contribute to our entire platform is built on a version of FreeBSD, but we integrate with everybody. It's a complete open API, no restrictions, no proprietary data formats. So if you had a checkpoint firewall, or let's say you have a Cisco system, with 1 click, you can quarantine this. You can cut it off your network, right? Now, this is a manual action. But imagine if you could get the holy grail of orchestrated response. The platform comes by default with a complete orchestration policy. And I'll give you just a simple example. So over here, I've created a rule called out of office hours. And I've said, if the attacker score, remember I showed you that dynamic risk score, if the score goes above 100 and he's hitting an SAP decoy, okay, over here, just to show you guys that it's powerful, I put a regular expression, but this could just be like, name is SAP database, just as an example. And the source is the CEO's laptop, and the time is between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. So it's a very simple rule that I've written here. If you don't want to learn how to write these rules, my support guys will help you write these rules as well. But this is a plain English rule. We're saying risk is above 100 on my SAP database, originating from CEO's laptop, and it's out of my office hours. I don't have a 24/7 team. But I know if this happened, I know what I would do. I would quarantine this threat. So what I can do is I can tell the platform, make a phone call to the chief security officer. No human being involved. The platform is integrated with VoIP solutions. We will make a phone call and send you a text message automatically. And you know what? Go talk to my checkpoint, quarantine this threat. Now, if this condition is ever met at 3 o'clock in the morning while you're fast asleep, you will get a phone call, you will get a text message, and the threat will be quarantined. We've even gone so far that you can say how many times should you be notified. So if your wife doesn't like you waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning to a phone call, you can have maybe one phone call every 5 minutes. So think of how powerful this is. In a given scenario where the threat actor is going to be operating faster than you, take ransomware. Ransomware is going to happen so fast. Usually our experience, ransomware happens on Saturday night or Sunday night, 2 or 3 in the morning your time. So your chance of response is very low. If you have this configured, the threat will be blocked, you'll get notified, and there's no human being involved in the process. This is huge step forward. And the reason we can do this is because of the low false positives. Because the false positives are low, we can orchestrate response. So I've taken you through from deploying deception, investigating alerts, and responding both manually and orchestrated, right? And I've tried to touch upon a mix between simple and advanced use cases like the threat hunting use cases that we have. So this is what the platform can do. Out of the box, we can create hundreds of different decoys. You name it. If it's a VoIP system, if it's a SCADA system, Citrix machine, VPNs, anytime we see new things, we have a shadow hunt threat intelligence team that is creating decoys of CCTVs, printers, you name it. It's all out of the box. If you have a system that we've never seen, you can just upload the virtual machine. So you can run a VM as a decoy. You can even run, if you have a Docker container, many of you may be using new technologies for application development, you can even deploy containerized versions of your applications as decoys. And you can just create and craft your own personalities. All this comes with complete support. We have a very strong partner network. For example, Channel IT, all our partners, they're trained and certified on the platform, not just on how to deploy it, but how to think, right? So any help that you need, our job, overall Smokescreen's mission is to make threat detection less work for you. Every other solution that you can purchase gives you more work to do. We try to give you less work to do, right? So that's just a quick overview of the platform. I'm keeping an eye on time. So I think, and I noticed we had a number of questions. So maybe Andreas, Chris, I'll open the floor up to you guys, and maybe then we can take questions from the audience, and happy to kind of go from there.